Although the score was a little closer at the end, I was disappointed in the way the red team ran their offense. They stood around, dribbled too much. Their effort was very good. They had 30. I haven't seen 30 offensive rebounds, which was not bode well for the blocking out by the 4s and 5s on the white team. But the white team ran their offense better, and that's why they won. They shot 55% to 35% for the red. At the end, the white didn't execute their press offense, and that's why the other team came back in the game. But it was, the other night I thought we played okay, and then I watched the tape of the game, and we did not. We played very, very poor defensively, so we'll watch this right after this and determine how well we did defensively. Most of the time you can tell offensively what you do. Defensively, you really need to break down the tape to see the rotations.
The white team shot so effectively for much of the game. What was going right for them?
Well, they got a lot of layups too, which helps. With the exception of their press offense, they moved the basketball better. Chris dribbled too much. Chris tried to win the game by himself just with great heart and will his team back. But this is exhibition basketball. It's not only about winning; it's about executing your offense. He wanted to win badly, but he did it in the wrong way.
Just because there's so many, young guys, you always talk about this early defense. Is this team not as far along as you?
Well, again, I have to look at the tape, but you have to say that it's not the freshmen, it's Montrez and Anis and Mats, because the 4 and 5 for the red team had 20 offensive rebounds. Now, we may be rotating, and maybe the guards didn't block out. I have to look at that. So it's not just the young guys. Most of the young guys aren't going to play. So, although we're mixing it up right now, you'll see more in the Barry scrimmage, more of our rotations. We're not going to play a lot of these freshmen because they're physically, mentally not ready to play.
Coach, having a veteran team with some returning guys, does that help the younger guys get up to speed quicker?
Well, I think we got some good veterans. I don't think we have a veteran team. I think we've got a few veterans. That's the weakness of the team right now. We don't have enough veterans. But the guys we do have, Wayne, Montrez, and our backcourt, they're really good basketball players. The 4 of those guys have been through it. They know what it is to win conference championships. They know what it is to go to Final Fours. The problem is there's only 4 of them. And they're going to play, unless they're in foul trouble, they're going to play the bulk of the minutes.
What would you like to see accomplished between now and the Barry exhibition?
Well, we're nowhere near where we need to be. I mean, this is by far the weakest physically we have been in the last 4 years. From a physical standpoint, we're very weak right now, and we've got to improve in those areas. Like Anis and Shaquan both can play the game, but where they struggle is physically. Like you'll see Shaquan, although he shot well tonight, he had 1 rebound. He picks up his dribble every time he comes off a pick and roll because he's not strong enough to get in the lane and take the punishment on a little bit, because he is a good. He's not using his 6'7" frame to do good things because of his physical weakness. So we got to work on that. We got to get him up 8-10 pounds. We got to get Anis up 8-10 pounds and see if they can play this year.
Hey, Shaquan, in a week though, it looks like he's more.
He's improving. He's getting better, especially defensively, because him and Quentin really struggled early on defensively, and he is getting better.
Do you like the 30-second?
I do. It doesn't bother us. The red team dribbled too much, and that was a problem. But I do like the 30 seconds. It's kind of strange. I like women's basketball, and I think they're very good at what they do from a passing, shooting skills. It's fun to watch women's basketball, but if they can play with a 30-second clock, how can the men not play with a 30-second clock?
How has Okoye come back off his injury? Is he doing better?
Okoye's problem is he's missed so much. He really is still a freshman. He's missed more practice in 2 years than any player I've coached. So, it's always something injury-wise. So it's tough to evaluate him because he's never practiced. It's a lot of those guys, like Jalen's got to, he's got to become more athletic by getting his body fat down, where the other guy's got to gain it. So Okoye's the same way. Really tough to evaluate because he's never practiced.
It seemed like the team did a good job of talking and communicating on the floor. Was that a point of emphasis from last week to now?
Yeah, I think I think Montrez is doing a good job. One thing we want Montrez to do, we played him a little bit tonight in small forward. Here's a guy that, Montrez is one of the brightest guys on our team. So he just immediately, we said, look, we'll play a little bit of 3 today. He immediately picked up every play and knew what to do. And he's going to play some 3, but what he's got to understand is he should shoot more jump shots as a 4 than he should as a 3. Because as a 3, he should punish the smaller player inside. And that's the one thing. He's got to get it to where he's 75-25 inside, so he doesn't take away that dominating presence inside. And he did a much better job in the second half of that. But those 4 guys are all going to play a lot of minutes. I mean, they're going to be very tight. That's why we didn't press as much in the first half. Is those guys got to play all, from 32 to 38 minutes a game, because our bench is not going to be there until sometime in January.
Are you ready for this team to face another team, to see some fresh faces?
Not at all.
No.
I think it's the opposite. I think this team needs a lot of practice, a lot of work, and a lot of skill development and fundamentals. So no, we're not tired of each other at all. That's true sometimes. Not with this basketball. This basketball team needs practice, practice, practice.
How did you rate Anis's performance today after how well he played last week?
I think Anis has good skills, but his deficiencies are from a lack of physicality. He's got good skills, good basketball. He's smart enough to know, you tell him once, don't bring the ball down. Mats brings it down every single time. Catches the ball. Mats, I think it's Halloween. I think he's afraid of the rim. I'm going to dress him up in a costume of a rim.
Anything else, Coach?
Coach, you keep talking specifically about the 4 players that are going to play the majority of the minutes. Talking specifically about Terry, how do you see him coming from last year where he averaged about 19 minutes a game to being a major contributor?
Well, I think, it's a subjective thing with all coaches. They all love their own players. And, I continue to say I won't say our backcourt's the best in the country. I just say I won't trade our backcourt for any backcourt in the country. I think Montrezl Harrell's one of the premier players in the country, and I wouldn't trade him for any player in the country. And I think Wayne Blackshear is a consistent performer, night in and night out, does a lot of good things. And, those 4 guys are just, they know what we have a culture here of really, really doing everything humanly possible to play for the front to win, whether it's a conference championship, whether it's the NCAA. Unfortunately, we have 6, 7 players who don't understand that culture at all. So those guys, until those young guys learn what we're all about, not so much plays, not so much offense and defense, it's all about giving every single thing you have. Like Chris Jones did not play well tonight, but he gave every single thing he had to try and win that basketball game. He did it the wrong way, but he did everything possible from a heart standpoint. And that's what we got to get all those guys to be able to do, to play with his type of fire. So he's come a long way. He's one of the premier, from going from a good freshman to one of the premier backcourt players in the country is a quantum leap.
You keep saying that you guys have a long way to go.
Am I being repetitive?
No.
Oh.
I'm sorry. No.
We're the second person that says I keep saying.
About this culture, how hard is it going to be to instill that culture in these players without them getting overwhelmed before,
I think it's very difficult. Now, if you're physically ready, you don't have to worry about that. So then you just try and get them mentally ready. But when you're not mentally ready, you're not physically ready, and you don't know the culture, it's very difficult. It's very difficult on Anis and Shaquan. But they're great guys, and they're also very talented. I know, and I say this only by guys who I think are very good basketball players, so I'm not talking about role players. But two of the guys that in the last 12, 13 years that have had the poorest freshman seasons were Peyton Seaver and Russ Smith. They had, of guys that could play. They had as bad a freshman year as any player I've coached here that was a player. And they ended up 2 of the premier players to play here. So, I don't concern myself too much with that, but Russ wasn't physically ready and Peyton was, but they still had very poor years. But they evolved into outstanding basketball players. And I think a lot of these freshmen, I don't know which ones, are going to evolve into outstanding basketball players. And it's all going to be, do they have the Peyton Seaver Russ Smith, heart and buying into that culture. Those two guys bought in as much as anybody and evolved into All-Americans.
You had said earlier, I think it was in the summertime, that you're not really a fan of redshirting a guy unless it's an injury or academics. Are you still thinking that with your guys? Or?
You know, Mats is not ready to play college basketball because, and I really, his background of playing in Norway, you know, you just see that he wants to play on the perimeter and pass and cut, and he shies away from the rim. I'm not being facetious when I say that. He does shy away, where that's here he would, if any player around here had that type of size, all they'd be looking at is just tear down the rim on every play. So he needs time, but I don't know, because he's very smart, whether he's going to evolve in 3 more weeks. Like I've seen in 1 week's time, Shaquan improve a lot. So you just can't gauge improvement sometimes, you know, with these guys, because like Anas is very smart. You know, he's studying to be an engineer, and so you only have to tell him something one time, and he picks it up right away. So I don't know. I don't know if they can, if Ray Ganon can get, you know, 10 pounds just makes him look like he's not going to disappear. It doesn't make him look like a strong basketball player. But we've got to get 10 pounds just so he's not punished in a game. And that's 210 pounds. It's 7 feet.
You mentioned those guys' heart, the Russ and Peyton. You have a knack for finding guys with that kind of heart and passion for the game. How do you do that?
Well, you really, you know, I don't want to talk about this recruiting class that I may be very excited about because I can't mention names. And we probably concentrated on that, which you just mentioned, this year more than any other year I've ever had. Because we felt when it was all said and done, the last 3 years of having the most wins of one class in the history of this great tradition, you realized why, you know, Luke Hancock and Stephen Van Treese, a selfless player, and Russ Smith and Peyton Sieve and Gorky Zhang and all those guys. You know, they just bought into a culture, just had great heart, and we realize now, I said, that's got to be a premium for us when we're evaluating. Not only are we evaluating skill level and attitude, but we're evaluating that heart. And I can't say right now, I know the class that we'll bring in this year will have that, over the top have that. This class, I can't say, because they're very quiet, they're very shy and very meek at times, so you really can't tell. You know, it was so obvious tonight that Chris Jones just wanted to win so badly. Didn't do a great job of knowing how, but he just wanted it. And when you get guys like that, you have a great chance to win.
Anything else for Coach?
Thank you.
Hey, thanks, Coach.